Hi guys, welcome to my channel. Whether a country with higher interest rate often has a currency that is expected to depreciate. At first, that sounds backward. If investors can earn 8% in one country and only 3% in another, shouldn't everyone move their money toward the 8% return? And if everyone wants that currency, shouldn't its value go up? This is exactly where international finance gets interesting. The answer is that you cannot look at the interest rate alone. You have to look at inflation, exchange rate, forward contract, and expected currency movement together. And there is a powerful set of relationships that connect all of them. These are called international parity conditions. Today we are going to build the entire framework from the ground up. Okay, before we look at individual formula, let's step back. International finance is really trying to answer one question: how should price and return adjust across countries? In my we had two countries, country A and country B. They had different inflation rates, different interest rates, and different currencies. If these markets are reasonably integrated, investors will look for opportunity to earn exit returns. If one market consistently offers a better risk-adjusted return for no reason, capital would move there. That capital flow would then affect interest rate, exchange rate, and asset price. So these parity conditions are basically different ways of describing the same economic system. Think of them as four pieces of a puzzle. CRP connect interest rate with forward exchange rate. UAB connect interest rate with the expected future spot exchange rate. And BBB connect inflation with expected currency movement. And the international fixed effect connect interest rate difference with inflation difference. Here's the big picture. If country A had persistently higher expected inflation than country B, its currency should tend to depreciate. Higher expected inflation also tend to be associated with higher nominal interest rates. And once interest rate differ, the forward exchange rate adjusts accordingly. Let's start with cover interest rate parity or CIP. The institution is extremely simple. Suppose you are an investor in country D. You have two choices. You can invest your money domestically or you can convert your money into foreign currency, invest it abroad, and then convert the money back later. But there is one problem: exchange rate risk. The foreign currency might appreciate or it might depreciate. So what if you eliminate that risk using forward contract? Now the investment becomes much more interesting. You are comparing domestic investment versus foreign investment plus a forward forex hedge. Under cover interest rate parity, these two strategies should produce the same return because if the foreign strategy offers a higher currency return, investor could exploit the difference through arbitrage. Money would flow into the higher return strategy until the advantage disappears. That's the key idea. CMBs is fundamentally an arbitrary relationship. No exchange rate uncertainty remains because the investor looks in the future exchange rate using a forward contract. This is the standard formula. The FFD is the forward exchange rate, SFD is the spot exchange rate, IF is the foreign interest rate, and ID is the domestic interest rate. Now notice something important. If the foreign interest rate is higher than the domestic interest rate, the forward exchange rate must adjust. That adjustment prevents a risk-free arbitrage opportunity. Now let's remove the hedge. This gives us uncover interest rate parity or UIP. The word uncover is the key. There is no forward contract protecting you from exchange rate movement. So now the investor is taking currency risk. The logic is a foreign investment with higher interest rate can still be expected to produce a similar return to a domestic investment if the foreign currency is expected to depreciate. Think about it. Suppose the domestic interest rate is 3% and the foreign interest rate is 8%. At first glance, the foreign investment look much better, but suppose investors expect the foreign currency to depreciate by roughly 5%, then the higher interest income is largely offset by the currency loss. So the expected return becomes much closer to the domestic alternative. The approximate UIB relationship is expected percentage change in exchange rate equal foreign interest rate minus domestic interest rate. The core message is the currency with the higher interest rate is expected to depreciate. Now we move from interest rate to inflation. This brings us to purchasing power parity or PPP. The institution start with the very simple idea currency ultimately buy goods and survive. If price rise much faster in one country than another, the purchasing power of that country currency is falling faster. Over time, the exchange rate should adjust to reflect that difference. In my two countries selling essentially the same basket of goods, country A experienced 8% inflation and country B experienced 2%. If the exchange rate never changed, goods in country A would become increasingly expensive relative to country B. That creates pressure for the currency of country A to weaken. So the BBB tells us the expected change in the exchange rate is related to the difference in expected inflation between two countries. And this is the approximate formula. So higher inflation lead to currency depreciation and lower inflation lead to currency appreciation. Okay, this is the international Fisher effect. The Fisher effect starts with the relationship between the nominal interest rate and expected inflation. Nominal interest rate equal real interest rate plus expected inflation. So if two countries have similar real interest rate, difference in their nominal interest rate should largely reflect difference in expected inflation. This gives us international Fisher effect. The interest rate differential between two countries should approximately equal the expected inflation difference between those countries. So this is the formula. In other words, if the foreign country had expected inflation that is 4% points higher, its nominal interest rate should also be roughly 4% points higher, assuming comparable real estate rate and risk premium. Now let's connect everything. Suppose country A suddenly develop much higher expected inflation than country B. First, BBB tell us that country A currency should expect to depreciate, and through the Fisher effect, higher expected inflation tend to produce higher nominal interest rate, and through UIB, the higher interest rate is associated with the expected currency movement that offset the interest rate advantage. And through CIB, the interest rate differential is reflected in the forward exchange rate. So one economic shock can propagate through the entire international financial system. That's why these concepts belong together.